Tributes for Madiba. Kenya declares 3 days of mourning. Keeping the records, APARTHEID Museum that says it all.
Kazi yake ni kutoa maneno ati ndio andikwe kwa gazeti. Mimi niliwaambia gazeti ni ya kufunga nyama.
Also tonight, why the president has no apologies over media bill. Many thought it would come sooner, but true to his profile of resilience and never say die attitude, Nelson Mandela defied all predictions. Tonight, the world continues to mourn the passing of that anti-apartheid legend who departed last night, having lived what many of his friends say was a full life. Freedom fighter, a nation's father, a continent's source of hope, and a worldwide icon. This is some of the words that have been used to describe Nelson Mandela, who passed on Thursday evening after a long-fought battle with severe lung infection. Madiba, as he is fondly referred to, died at 9:50 p.m. Kenyan time. And since the announcement of his death by South Africa's President Jacob Zuma, nothing but tremendous messages of condolences have been shared throughout the entire world, celebrating a life well lived. Mandela, who spent his life fighting against racial oppression, including 27 years of imprisonment, was loved and admired the world over. The former president battled health issues in recent years, including a recurring lung infection that led to numerous hospitalizations. But despite rare public appearances, he held a special place in the consciousness of the nation and the world. Mandela will not only be remembered for his agitation for peace and reconciliation, but also for his passionate battle against apartheid in South Africa that brought an end to racial segregation. He went from a militant freedom fighter to a prisoner to a unifying figure and undoubtedly to a world icon. Now, nearly 24 hours after Mandela passed on, the government in South Africa has announced elaborate plans for his funeral that is expected to be within the next 9 days. President Jacob Zuma announced a week of national mourning as the world came to terms with the passing of that anti-apartheid icon. KTN's Edith Kimani has the latest on Madiba's passing.
In Soweto, they remembered him with song and dance, true to the tradition of this neighborhood that was so intensely linked to the fight Mandela championed. But even these admirers of Madiba know that they will have to share this moment with the entire world. A Nobel Peace Prize winner, a world-respected leader, and the father of the Rainbow Nation, Nelson Mandela will get a send-off befitting of all his titles. Zuma announced that the former South African president would be accorded a state funeral on the 15th of December in his Kunu village. A ceremony of remembrance is expected to be held on Monday in the Soweto Football Stadium where the World Cup was hosted. This ceremony will likely see a multitude of South Africans turning up to the 95,000 capacity venue. and the residents are getting ready for the crowds.
A moment of joy for South Africans to celebrate the life of a legend, you know. So I knew that the atmosphere is just going to come nice. It was never a mourning moment, but it was like, yeah, they meant it this time. So it's, what about us? What are we doing with our time, you know? So, but today is just reflecting on him.
After the ceremony, Mandela's body will lay either in Pretoria's City Hall or the Union Buildings, where he was sworn in from Wednesday until Friday. Special guests attending the funeral will have 1 day set aside for a private viewing of the body before the doors are open to the public. As this happens, condolence books will be opened at all of South Africa's foreign embassies as well as at his former home in Soweto. Global leaders from around the world are expected to converge for the funeral, with US President Barack Obama, the Pope, the Queen, UK Prime Minister David Cameron, the Dalai Lama and former US President Bill Clinton said to be in the long VVIP list. Other global personalities expected in South Africa for the funeral include Microsoft founder Bill Gates, talk show host Oprah Winfrey and supermodel Naomi Campbell. In accordance to the Xhosa customs, it is expected that a cow or a sheep will be slaughtered, after which the possessions of Mandela will be placed inside his grave. Whether the family will want to follow this custom to the letter is not known. But this is a man whose legacy will live on.
In order to build a new nation.
The week of mourning will run from December 8th to 15th. During this time, memorial services will be held in all provinces, with Sunday being set aside as a national day of prayer and reflection. Edith Kimani, KTN.
The Big Q in association with Kenya Power.
Now, throughout the day, we have been seeing different leaders from across the world and also citizens of the world just tweeting and sharing their messages of condolences and what they remember most about the late Nelson Mandela. And at this point, we'd like to ask you, BK, tonight, what are your memories of the late Nelson Mandela? What is it that reminds you of him? What is it that you fondly remember about Madiba? You can tweet me at Betty Kyalo or at KTN Kenya, but also you can SMS us 22155. That's the number. Let us know what your memories are of this worldwide icon, and we'll be glad to share them with you during this newscast.
Get power information right at your fingertips. Dial *551# Kenya Power.
Now, here in Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta declared 3 days of national mourning in honor of Mandela. The president announced that all flags would fly at half-mast during that period, as Kenyans of all walks of life paid tribute to Madiba. KTN's Catherine Omonto reports on that national grief thousands of kilometers away from South Africa.
Bring him back home to Soweto. I want to see him walking down the streets of South Africa.
Kenya joins Africa in celebrating the life of a first liberation hero. Nelson Mandela was no stranger to Kenyan soil. When Mandela was released from prison in 1990, he and his second wife, Winnie Mandela, embarked on a world tour to thank those who supported him and agitated for his release. The couple visited the country under the rule of the second president, Daniel Arap Moi. This is when he addressed Kenyans at Kasarani Stadium. He would come back to the country in 1992 and again in 1996. Mandela touched the hearts of so many Kenyans, not just the generations of his lifetime, but he will continue to inspire those to come. The first black president of South Africa had been in and out of hospital in 2013. However, June marked the beginning of the end, and when the world learnt of his death, all had nothing but praise for the 95-year-old man. President Uhuru Kenyatta described Madiba's death as an irreplaceable loss.
In his humility, President Mandela did what was right, made tremendous sacrifices, and did not seek any form of personal praise.
In his condolence message, Deputy President William Ruto termed Madiba as a selfless and principled man.
Nelson Mandela stands out as a leader who he didn't look at the magnitude of the challenge that faced him, but he looked at the possibility of the success that those challenges and the opportunity those challenges presented.
Former President Mwai Kibaki said Madiba redefined the meaning of freedom and that though we have lost a hero, Madiba has transformed the world. And former Prime Minister Raila Odinga says he was lucky to have lived in Madiba's time. Madiba will go down in history as a man who never fought racism with racism. He is said to have removed South Africa from the dark days of apartheid and racial animosity with humility.
We feel the African leaders should emulate Mandela.
Alikuwa my role model tangu my childhood. Na zawadi mtu nilikuwa nampenda sana. Na kwa vile alikuwa hakuwa na tamaa ya uongozi.
He was a brave man. He encouraged many leaders in the African continent and even in the whole world.
Nelson Mandela did not just set an example for the world, but also for the dark continent, a continent that is known to produce self-seeking leaders. Now, as everybody eulogizes this icon, many are asking, when will another come again? Catherine Omwando, KTN.
Now, such glowing tributes came from all parts of the world, with leaders such as Barack Obama of the US and UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon honoring the departed hero. KTN's Wilkiston Yabwa now takes a look at that outpouring of accolades that greeted Mandela's passing.
South African President Jacob Zuma broke the news of Nelson Mandela's death. In a televised address, he announced that Mandela was now resting and that he was at peace.
Our nation has lost its greatest son. Our people have lost a father.
Shortly after this announcement, a stream of tributes began to pour in from world leaders. US President Barack Obama was one of the first to pay tribute to the iconic South African leader, saying Nelson Mandela now belonged to the ages. He went on to speak about the way the late South African leader had inspired him and noted that his first political action was a protest against South Africa's apartheid policies.
His journey from a prisoner to a president embodied the promise that human beings and countries can change for the better.
In London, David Cameron lauded Mandela as a towering figure, adding that with his death, a great light had gone out in the world. Former US President George W. Bush called Mandela one of the greatest forces for freedom and equality. Another former US President, Bill Clinton, also mourned the death of Mandela, but added that history would remember Nelson Mandela as a champion for human dignity. Ban Ki-moon described Mandela as an iconic leader who forgave those who imprisoned him and united a country that was divided along racial lines.
He touched our lives in deeply personal ways.
A message of condolence also came from Frederick de Klerk, the South African president under whom Nelson Mandela was released from prison. 77-year-old de Klerk shared the Nobel Peace Prize with Mandela in 1993 for brokering the end of apartheid, and when the ANC leader was elected president in the first multiracial election, he entered into a government of national unity as his deputy.
We reach out to the whole Mandela family and give condolences, and we will hold them in our prayers.
In Nairobi, the South African High Commission announced that it has made arrangements for members of the public to convey their condolences. Starting Monday, the 9th of December, until Mandela is buried, members of the public are invited to convey their condolences at Kilimani Primary School, while senior government officials will pay their tributes at the High Commissioner's residence. Mandela will be accorded a state funeral. President Zuma has ordered all flags in South Africa to be flown at half-mast until the icon is buried. Mandela, who was popularly referred to by his clan name Madiba, is survived by his widow, 6 children and 17 grandchildren. Wilkiston Yabwa, KTN.
Now, throughout the bulletin, we will get to share what different leaders and citizens of the world had to say about the late Madiba. But joining us right now from South Africa is Hajra Omarji, who is a journalist there. Hajra, good evening.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us. Now, where exactly are you? And if you could describe for us the mood for us where you are.
I'm just a few meters away from Nelson Mandela's Houghton home. That's the home that he took his last breath in last night. And there have been scenes of great emotion here. Thousands of people have come through the course of the day to mourn Nelson Mandela, but also celebrate his life. Now, political leaders were also here today, amongst them ANC and South Africa's President Jacob Zuma, as well as ANC Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, leaders of opposition parties, Bantu Holomisa. And now, as you know, Holomisa is also a friend and a comrade of Nelson Mandela, who spent much time with him in recent years. But the mood and the tone was really set by the people. We saw black and white South Africans from all races and all ages come out to celebrate Mandela's life. And the political leaders who were here today were in awe of the impact and the legacy that Mandela had left.
Now, Hajra, throughout the day, we've been seeing so many people come out, celebrating, dancing outside his home. Are these numbers becoming bigger by the hour?
They are indeed becoming bigger by the hour. Some are coming to pay their respect. Some are coming to send their condolences to the family. Nelson Mandela sacrificed much of his family life for the struggle against apartheid, and many of the people we spoke to said that they wanted to show the Mandela family that although he had gone, they had an entire family which would continue to embrace them, that appreciated what he had done for them. Let's not forget that it was just 25 years ago that Nelson Mandela refused to sacrifice an idea, refused to have his own freedom, so that all of us in South Africa could have the right to vote, and people really coming out to show their appreciation.
Now, Hajra, it was very hard for South Africans back when Mandela was in hospital a few months ago. How is it now? Because it was very difficult at that point. The people who did not go to work, they just literally camped outside the hospital. So what is happening right now?
Well, I think the nation took a collective deep breath when Nelson Mandela passed away. Internationally, we saw news headlines saying that South Africa had lost its moral compass in Nelson Mandela. You heard U.S. President Barack Obama say that never again in the world would there be a leader like Nelson Mandela. And I think South Africans have come out to show in celebrating Mandela today that he lives in all of us as South Africans. But they also serve to remind ANC leaders and political leaders in our country that they need to follow Mandela's example, and that he would live on in all of us for much longer. So school is in holiday at this time, and children came out today to celebrate Mandela's life because there was nowhere else they would want to be. South Africans, black and white, came out to show their respect. Some spent the entire day in massive celebration outside his Houghton home, in Soweto, in central Johannesburg, as well as in rural Eastern Cape, because they felt that they too are in mourning. Now, as you know, South Africa is in a period of national mourning led by our President Jacob Zuma, and I think South Africans as a collective feel that they are in mourning, but they also appreciate the condolences that are being received from world leaders and ordinary people on the streets of Nairobi, on the streets of New York, and on the streets of London.
Hajra, finally, I'm sure you've spoken to so many South Africans there. I mean, what are some of the lessons that they're saying that they have emulated or they're hopefully going to emulate from the late Madiba?
Well, the first and foremost on people's minds is Nelson Mandela's famous quote, and I paraphrase here when I say, he said that people with poverty do not know real freedom. And that has been generally accepted by most political leaders. But one of his closest comrades and friends, not in any political leadership as it stands, has come out to remind South Africans that Mandela treated everyone equally, be it peasants or royalty. Mac Maharaj, for example, who is the spokesperson for the president but also a comrade for Mandela, came out to give a touching tribute earlier today where he reminded us all that Mandela engaged in political discussions. He engaged with an attempt to understand the perspective of the other party instead of just imposing his own perspective. He listened to everyone around the table. He listened to the country. He said he wasn't a prophet or...
All right, thank you very much, Hajra Omaji. She is coming to us by the way of phone from Johannesburg. Just keeping us up to speed with what's happening down there. As she has said, there's so many people who are, turning out outside Madiba's home to dance, to just pay their last respects to this man who is a worldwide icon and a hero to more and many of them. So just who is this man that has literally brought the world to a standstill? Well, KTN's Rita Tanina now looks back on the life that began inside a humble clan and grew to catch global attention.
The world's most celebrated statesman. The world's most famous prisoner. African icon. Anti-apartheid hero. The curtains have come down on Nelson Mandela, or Madiba, as he was fondly referred to by many South Africans. Life for the African legend began in Umtata village, Transkei in the Eastern Cape on the 18th of July, 1918. Rolihlala Dalibunga was born into the Madiba tribal clan of the Thembu people to Chief Henry Mgadla Mandela. Given his name Nelson by his teacher, he went to the Hilltown Methodist boarding school. Later, he joined the University College of Hot Hair before enrolling at the University of Witwatersrand to study law. He graduated in 1942. A year later, when he turned 25, Mandela began what would later define his life. He joined the African National Congress as an activist and co-founded the ANC Youth League in 1944. With widespread racial segregation in South Africa, Mandela distinguished himself as a strong opponent of the apartheid regime. The 1952 Defiance Campaign propelled him to the limelight as he kicked off a countrywide resistance campaign against discrimination. He was given a suspended sentence for taking part in the campaign, and later a ban that confined him to Johannesburg for 6 months was imposed, but he did not relent. He teamed up with Oliver Tambo and kept the campaign against apartheid alive. The struggle was renewed in 1955 during the Congress of the People, a gathering that saw Mandela alongside 155 other activists charged with treason. The trial for treason went on for 4 years, after which the charges against Mandela were dropped. As the struggle gained momentum, Mandela married his second wife, Winnie Madikizela, in 1958. Away from his new marriage, the apartheid resistance was about to enter an ugly phase, escalating tensions with the apartheid regime. In 1960, 69 blacks were killed in the infamous Sharpeville massacre. The ANC was banned following the killings. Mandela, who launched an economic sabotage campaign against the government, was briefly detained before he went underground, from where he pushed for the setting up of a military wing within the ANC. In 1961, Umkhonto we Sizwe, the military wing of the ANC, was born. In 1962, Mandela left the country for military training in Algeria. Upon his return, he was captured and charged with leaving the country illegally and attempting to overthrow the government. Mandela was convicted and jailed for 5 years in November 1962. While serving his sentence, he was charged in the Rivonia trial and in the winter of 1964 was convicted of treason and sentenced to life in prison. He started his prison years in the infamous Robben Island prison, a maximum security facility on a small island off the coast of Cape Town. Confined to a small cell, the floor for his bed, a bucket for a toilet, he was forced to do hard labor in a quarry, was allowed one visitor a year for 30 minutes. His imprisonment saw him become a worldwide symbol of resistance to racism and later the world's most famous prisoner. When in prison, Mandela rejected offers which included one by P.W. Botha for freedom if he renounced violence. He remained in prison on Robben Island for 18 years. But even as Mandela and other ANC leaders languished behind bars or lived in exile, South Africa's black township children helped sustain the resistance. In 1980, an international campaign to release Mandela was launched. The international community tightened sanctions against the apartheid regime, and it paid off. On the 2nd of February 1990, South African President F.W. de Klerk finally lifted the ban on the ANC and other anti-apartheid organizations. And after nearly 3 decades behind bars, Nelson Mandela walked to freedom from the Victor Verster prison on the 11th of February 1990, emerging as the world's most famous prisoner, mediator, philosopher, and president in waiting. Following his release, Mandela and his delegation agreed to the suspension of the armed struggle.
There are sports teams that were supposed to come to South Africa. They have not done so because of the state of emergency. I invite all of them to come to South Africa, irrespective of the state of emergency.
Nelson Mandela then midwifed the rebirth of South Africa.
Let us stretch out our hands to those who have beaten us and to say to them, we are all South Africans. We have had a good fight, but now this is the time to heal the old wounds and to build a new South Africa.
In 1993, he won the Nobel Peace Prize, and a year later, in 1994,
so help me God,
was elected the first black president of South Africa, marking a new dawn for the country. With the transition from apartheid, he oversaw national reconciliation and initiated programs to address issues such as disparities in wealth. In 1998, he married his third wife, Graça Machel. But his decision to step down as president after just 5 years won him even more international respect and admiration. He retired to a quiet life, retreating from the public limelight amid failing health.
I am now retiring from retiring. And this is for real. And I hope you'll allow me to rest. And if I have to call, I'll call myself. I would prefer that nobody should call me.
Happy birthday to you.
9 years after his retirement, the world would mark his 90th birthday.
I'm happy that I've lived until now, because there are not many people who look after themselves and who can live for such a long time.
Nelson Mandela. Soweto's favorite son, the little boy from Transkei, turned out to be one of the iconic figures of the 20th and the 21st centuries, the world's most celebrated statesman. Rita Tinina, KTN.
The Big Q in association with Kenya Power.
A life of resilience and a never say die attitude, something that we should all emulate from this great leader. And we want to know your thoughts, your
He says the icon's speech touched on issues of peace and education.
And I remember the choir sang the South African anthem, and the late Mandela was really touched. He had to rise from each chair and actually raised up his fist throughout the song.
One of the things he told us, which stuck in my mind up to today, was the issue of the learning environment in Kenya, and particularly the learning environment at Moi High School, Kabarak.
His speech was so much centered. He was talking about big things, about the issue of being an African, and the aspect of the privilege of being in Kenya.
They say Mandela's visit to the school will always be remembered, but more importantly, the words that he uttered that particular day.
If this man had such a humble beginning and such a rough time, did he one time really expect that he would be out and even be able to address the world and be a role model to so many of us?
Kamchemenza, KTN from Nakuru.
Mandela's life was defined by struggle, and nothing exemplified that more than the one thing he spent more than half of his life fighting: apartheid. KTN's Ashamulo visited the museum where the story of one of the world's most despicable eras is immortalized.
While the country has the world's attention during this trying time, does the world really understand how apartheid was for South Africans? Take a tour of these dark times with me at the Apartheid Museum.
The basic principle behind apartheid was single: segregation, to keep the white people divided from the black people and to maintain it that way. Here at the Apartheid Museum in Johannesburg, they want to give you that experience. How did it feel like to be a black person back then? How did it feel like to be a white person during the apartheid period? My ticket says that I'm going to the non-whites, meaning black people would be allowed to that segment, but the other segment, no goes on.
As soon as I walked into the museum, looking around at how racial segregation in South Africa was instilled, cold shivers went down my spine. The deeper I went into memory lane, the more emotional I became. Confused, disgusted, angry. And then I got to this excerpt quoted from a debate in the House of Assembly in the year 1950, and it reads, "The white man is the master in South Africa, and the white man, from the very nature of his origins, from the very nature of his birth, and from the very nature of his guardianship, will remain master in South Africa to the end."
It's an annoying experience to imagine that anything like that could have been done to humanity. That you wake up one day and they ask you, because of your color, you cannot access certain things just because of color. It's really appalling. It's degrading. I couldn't imagine that some people actually face that thing.
One, I feel sad that it really happened. And the second feeling that I have is that it has taught us a lesson, though from a very hard perspective.
However, the Apartheid Museum doesn't leave you angry. While it takes you through South Africa's lowest moments, it also shows you the country's highs. It shows you the transition from apartheid into self-governance when Mandela took over as the first black president of the country.
Madiba is our hero. He taught us a lot of things, and to respect each another, to love each another. You see, because our world was so mixed up. But now we feel like person. Before we didn't even walk to the pavement like this.
The parks, even the playgrounds, was the whites only. The toilets, the facilities was all whites only. I remember the Africans being obliged to take the what they called in those days the Patco buses to work, which I think were government owned.
After touring this museum, a lot of foreigners say they now better understand what Mandela really means to the South African people and why he is idolized across the continent. Asha Mwilu, KTN, Johannesburg.
Indeed, he is a leader that was respected globally and admired by many. Not only did he let go the pain and suffering that he underwent while in jail, but he united South Africa at a time when many thought he would seek revenge against the white minority that enforced apartheid. He won, together with President Frederick de Klerk, Nobel Peace Prize. And here is a pictorial archive of Mandela's long journey that is now history.
My Lord, if it need be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. Let our celebrations be in keeping with the mood set in the elections, peaceful, respectful, and disciplined, showing we are a people ready to assume the responsibilities of government. I am now retiring from retiring. And this is for real. And I hope you'll allow me to rest. And if I have to call, I'll call myself. I would prefer that nobody should call me. Mama Lillian Goyi Richard Mahama Neta Daota Sisulu Landela Onabano Chrisani Bazembam Bayandi Landela Matiki Zela Mandela Uzembam Oyandi Landela Tata Honi Tata Mandela Yandi Landela Uzembam Oyandi Landela Oyandi Landela. I am very happy that I have lived until now, and I hope many South Africans and other people in the world will live like this.
Such a contagious and warm smile. I want to bring in my colleague Bonnie Tunya, who's coming to us straight from our business studio. Tunya, great to see.
Concessioning of the country's railways to the Rift Valley Railways in 2006 almost rendered the corporation irrelevant. But the plan to transform Kenya's infrastructure hinged on the construction of a fast, efficient and cheap means of transport along the Trans-African corridor has brought the corporation back to track.
One of the aspect was the need to have an institution which is going to spearhead the promotion and development and facilitation of national rail network and also the commuter rail network.
At the core of its mission today is the improvement to the city's transport to be done through the relaunch of the Nairobi commuter rail system.
The most painful passenger is a Kenyan. By the time they reach from wherever they are living to the city center, it was taking close to 2 hours, and it was costing, jams were costing this country around 50 billion.
With the Syokimau station already in place, the corporation is expecting the Imara Daima and Makadara stations to come on board in the coming week. Kenya Railway says the new stations will help it break even by earning it more than 250,000 shillings a day. According to Kenya Railways, plans are also afoot to launch the train service in other parts of the city like Westlands, Rongai and Upper Hill, and also on the redesigned Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Adelaide Changole, KTN Business.
6 lucky Kenyan families are set to get free houses through a partnership between the Standard Group and the ELS group of companies and the property show. Now, the 6 lucky families or individuals must be nominated by an overwhelming majority of Kenyans with proof that they are really deserving to get a home. One house will be given every month, with the last house expected to be given out in May of 2014. Now, so far, one house has already been given out to one of the Kenya's independence heroes, the man who composed the tune of our national anthem, while the remaining 5 will be given out to the person nominated by most Kenyans as one who deserves to get the house. Now, from ELS group of companies and the Standard Group CEO Sam Shelley also called upon property developers in the country to be mindful of the hard economic times that most Kenyans are going through and help bring down the cost of mortgages and housing across the country.
Of the LSEC and LSEC and LSEC, giving out 6 free houses to be given out to 6 Kenyan families who will participate in the property show.
5,000 houses can be owned by Kenyan with paying only, with no down payment, 25,000 shillings per month during 7.5 years. And they can receive their houses every year, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000.
Tune in on the property show each Sunday only on KTN at 6 p.m. We will give you the details each Sunday on how you can nominate the family that deserves a home this season.
Right, I thought we had started the property show, right? But anyway, you may soon be able to access all information you want on Mombasa and its resources at the click of a button. The county government today launched a land-based resource mapping for economic development in partnership with the Ministry of Mining. Once complete, at the click of a button, one will be able to establish a raft of information, including the number and precise locations of utilities and institutions like schools and hospitals, populations of specific areas, ambulances and brigade facilities, as well as digitized information on land parcels, buildings and associated utilities. Mombasa County Governor Hassan Joho said the move will enable his government to prepare an effective utilization program for the limited land cover of just about 300 square kilometers. Mining Cabinet Secretary Najib Balala said all county governments are expected to undertake mapping and generate statistics for proper planning and development in their counties.
In the case of Satellite, there are areas which are not facing the satellite. So we're going to... Mangroves are a carbon stock, carbon sink.
The wealth of knowledge and experience available in the ministry and in the innovative approaches, including use of real-time, geo-based high-resolution technology, including smartphone, will be employed to deliver to this country the necessary data and maps for its development planning.
Business entities within the counties, opportunities, planning, so that we are able as county government to tell you there is this number of business in this zoning on this area, and we urge you to do probably in this other area because this one is saturated already.
For this to be achieved, county integrated plans are therefore necessary, and this can only be realized with appropriate data and information.
Ordinarily, software developers are primed to be young and vibrant. However, at 60 years old, Joyiti Mukherjee is defying the odds and the challenging youngsters in this demanding trade. Our very own Joy Doreen Bira caught up with her and brings us this report.
As more Kenyans embrace technology, the preconception that ICT-based professions and innovations are only for the youthful generation could be one that many could rethink. Joyiti Mukherjee, at 60 years of age, is the brainchild behind eBoard, a new software system set to transform millions of boardroom meetings in Kenya and beyond.
What does the system do is not only keep track of all your minutes and agendas and your plans and your resolutions, but also because I have been the director for Center for Corporate Governance and I have been training on governances matters, we put compliances, we put the evaluations, we put the meeting modules.
With finance, marketing and management background, Mukherjee believes digitizing processes at higher levels of management ensures transparency, enhances evaluation reports and saves time.
You have got more efficiency and time saving by running the meeting. 8 hours discussion forums in the boardrooms can be cut down into half an hour.
With 27 years software experience, she has grown software development with successes like the eHorizon brand and a software programming school. With the eBoard system, Joyiti is among the growing number of women innovators in the industry, but just like every successful business.
Went from company to say, okay, don't pay me, just see what we are doing and we prove you that we can deliver, and then you pay me.
Today, Kenya boasts of some of the finest hands-on technology on the tablet systems and applications implemented in various parts of the world, of which Joyiti Mukherjee at 60 continues to be part of.
Quite inspiring, and that's what we need on this Grey Friday. But let's take a look at the numbers right now as we go to the market with a look at the financial market review coming up next.
The Financial Report in association with Total.
At Total, we provide high-quality fuels to all our customers, even the most demanding ones. Total, you know where to turn.
Financial Report in association with Total.
At Total, we provide high-quality fuels to all our customers, even the most demanding ones. Total, you know where to turn.
KTN Business in association with Safaricom Self-Care.
To get your M-Pesa statement, PUK, Bongo Points and more without calling customer care or visiting a Safaricom shop, simply log on to www.safaricom.co.ke and click on Self-Care.
So that's how the numbers look like. We'll talk business again on Monday. Back to Betty.
Thanks, Tunya, for that. Let's now have a recap of our top story tonight. And South African President Jacob Zuma has announced a 10-day period of mourning following the death of Nelson Mandela, culminating in a state funeral and burial on December 15th. The former South African president will be accorded a state funeral and will be laid to rest in Kunu in the Eastern Cape province. Zuma outlined a 10-day calendar of events to follow Mandela's death at his Johannesburg home on Thursday. He called called on South Africans to take part in a day of prayer this Sunday. On Monday, December 9th, both houses of parliament in South Africa will be recalled from recess for a special joint sitting in honor of Mandela's legacy. On December 10th, a memorial service will be held at a 90,000-plus capacity stadium in Soweto. Several heads of state will attend that service, while others will attend the state funeral on the 15th. Let's now take a look at other stories. President Uhuru Kenyatta has said that the government has no intention of gagging the media, but the media needs to take responsibility and be accountable for its deeds. He was speaking in Tharaka Nithi County during the centenary celebrations for Chuka Town in company of his deputy William Ruto.
Sherehe za kuadhimisha miaka 100 ya kuwepo kwa mji wa Chuka katika kaunti ya Tharaka Nithi zilinuka.
We do apologize for that mix-up, but moving on to other stories, Cabinet Secretary for Interior Joseph Olelenku has dismissed concerns by lawmakers about the state of insecurity in the country and the apparent failure by the police to maintain law and order. Lenku says he is aware some parts of the country have consistently experienced a number of security challenges in recent times, and the military would be deployed to contain the situation. Lenku said security agents will remain vigilant to ensure that security is maintained throughout the country.
The hula baloo surrounding an apparently runaway insecurity is not correct. It is not backed by any statistics. We have statistics that shows the state of security in the country, and these statistics are compared against previous statistics, properly documented, can be authenticated, and the position of runaway insecurity is not correct. We are aware that a lot more needs to be done with regard to security, and that is why we are giving this commitment that we will employ more technology. We have sought the use of military and their equipments in areas where security has been compromised, as we also recognize that some of those areas, specifically Moyale, border other countries where infiltrations could have taken place. And therefore, Kenyans need to take the assurance from myself as their cabinet secretary responsible for their security that there is no runaway insecurity in the country.
To other matters, and Chief Justice Dr. Willie Mutunga has called for a quick resolution to the dispute between the three arms of government which seem to be working against each other. The CJ, however, says the judiciary will continue to perform its constitutional mandate. He has at the same time urged Parliament and the executive to ensure that they respect the decisions coming from the courts, since it is the final repository of constitutional power.
We respect and will continue to respect the mandates of other two arms of state and other institutional bodies. Robust independence does not, however, mean lack of constructive and meaningful engagement through dialogue, consultation, mediation, and consultation with other arms of government. Indeed, when it comes to the supremacy of the interests of the Kenyan people, all the three arms collapse into one. It is on this basis I'm confident that the existing crisis between the three arms will be resolved and will find a balance of resolving future disputes.
President Uhuru Kenyatta has said that the government has no intention of gagging the media, but the media needs to take responsibility and be accountable for its deeds. He was speaking in Tharaka Nithi County during the centenary celebrations for Chuka Town in company of his deputy William Ruto.
Chuka town in Tharaka-Nithi County was alive with the centenary celebrations that were graced by President Uhuru Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto. What took center stage, though, is a controversial media bill that has caused sensations amongst the stakeholders. At the unveiling of the Chuka monument, President Uhuru, while addressing the crowd, had this to say.
Kiongozi akisimama, kazi yake ni kutoa maneno ati ndio andikwe kwa gazeti. Mimi niliwaambia gazeti ni ya kufunga nyama.
And at Chuka University, where the main event took place, they asked the media to hold consultative talks with the government so as to forge the way forward.
What is wrong with a fine if you have no intention of doing anything wrong? It doesn't apply.
If the media feels there are issues, let us discuss them in an open, in a fair manner, so that, and in a truthful way.
While sending out a strong message, President Uhuru also cautioned leaders against inciting their constituents.
Our job, all of us as leaders, is to encourage our people to live in harmony.
As President Uhuru Kenyatta warns leaders against divisive politics, citing the many cases of insecurity that have rocked parts of the country, he has warned the leaders that they will be held accountable for their actions. Carol Derry for KTN in Tharaka-Nithi County.
Right, time for me to leave the stage to Lynn, our sports anchor, for the day's sports. Lynn, what do you have for us?
Of course, we have some news on the World Cup draw that just happened a few minutes ago. And I think before the bulletin, we spoke about Madiba and his love for sports. And you were telling me that he loved boxing a lot.
Apart from politics, another passion of his was boxing, but he loved it because, you know, he was how do I say, he was really interested in how someone protects themselves. I think that's something I think we should take as ladies. That was one of Madiba's passions, I know.
Yeah, and he also has a very special sports connection that is closer home, and it has something to do with Gor Mahia. And anyway, that and more stories will be coming to you after a short break.
How Mandela used sports to unite South Africa.
Sisi katika Kenya hii yetu zote tutaishi hapa hapa na tutakuwa humu na hakuna mtu atahama na